Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. And today we've got a great interview with one of our nation's leading transit executives, Mr. Terry White, CEO and General Manager of King County Metro in Seattle, Washington, one of the nation's top 10 transit systems. I asked Terry to tell us about his life story, and he does on this podcast. He's got quite an interesting background. He grew up riding transit out of necessity. He talks about what it meant to him and his life, and what it means to his community there in the Seattle area. Terry's also going to share that story at our Think Transit conference coming up on March 21st in Fort Worth, Texas, as the keynote speaker for our conference that Monday morning. I know you'll want to see him there in person as well. Terry also goes into how the coronavirus pandemic impacted transit and how they're coming back, and the ripple effect that transit is having there in his community. I think you'll really enjoy this in-depth interview with one of our nation's leading transit executives, Terry White. This is Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. Great to be with you on another edition of Transit Unplugged In Depth, the world's leading transit executive podcast. Today, I'm excited to have with us as our guest, Mr. Terry White. Terry White is CEO and General Manager of King County Metro in Seattle, Washington. Terry, thanks so much for being on the show.
Paul, thanks for having me. It is absolutely a pleasure to join you.
So Terry and I were recently together in person for the first time in a long time at APTA Expo. And we said, we got to get you on the show. And also, Terry is, we're real excited. Terry's going to be the keynote speaker at this year's Trapeze Think Transit Conference coming up in March in Fort Worth. And so we're going to talk about that some today. But first off, Terry, why don't you tell us something about yourself and how you ended up as general manager there? You've got quite a story, my friend.
Yes, long story. I'll make it a little bit brief today for us. I literally grew up on public transit in Seattle, born and raised, forever here, never leaving, by the way. So love it to death. I grew up in a housing project with a single parent mother who had a disability, and her disability did not allow her to operate a motor vehicle. So subsequently, the bus was all I really knew growing up. And it was my life to the point where I didn't see or have another option that came about. So I literally grew up on a bus. I did not know what we did not have because that was literally how I did it. So as far back as I can recall, I remember her having a stack of timetables, and she'd be trying to put together the path we were going to navigate for the day. My mother was very intent on ensuring that I had the same culture opportunities that everyone else had. So she would seek them out, and she would figure out how to put together that schedule for us to go, transferring and all. So literally, I grew up on the bus, and eventually she came to me and said, "You're now at an age where I need you to figure out how to do this thing on your own, because I've got to go to work and I need you to go to a school outside your district," and so on. And she put that to me in a way that actually scared me a little bit, because I had, wait a minute. But she assured me, look, go up front, sit up front, make eye contact with operators. They'll take care of you. The system's fine. It'll work for you. And, long story short, it worked. I am a lifelong rider, lover of transit. You would call me a choice rider now, but my choice is to still ride. Even in the pandemic, I continued to use all the mobility options that we have available to us here in the region to get to and from my place of work, which is the Central Business District of Seattle. But yeah, I grew up in the system. Operators used to allow me to work their signage. So now I'm dating myself in terms of age, manual signage, and they would let me keep my 20 cents. So I feel like I've been employed for even longer than the 35 years that I've been at King County. But I knew then I wanted in on that opportunity for mobility. It was doing something for me in terms of I was going to school outside the district that I grew up in to get a better education, which afforded me the opportunity to eventually go to college. But at 10, I knew I got to figure out how to get one of these buses. I got to figure out how to operate it. And that was the intent for all that came after. Now, ironically, I've had 14 positions at King County Metro, and one of them is not bus operator.
Everything but a bus operator, huh?
Yes. So in the end, though, love it. Understand why mobility is a human right and a necessity, and the inclusion of the folks who we're moving, who need us the most, and having their voices in those rooms are reasons why I chose that career path, and I continue to advocate for it really to this day, and will continue to do so.
What is it, with that experience, having grown up riding and everything, what does transit mean to you? I mean, to be the GM of a system now that you grew up on, what does it mean to you?
I think, the irony for me wanting to be a bus driver, and at 10 years old, that was the dream I could have. That was what I saw and knew. I couldn't even dream of what transit could do, what mobility does for a person. In the end, when we at King County, we say we want to create a welcoming community where everybody has an opportunity to thrive. Well, you don't get your opportunity to thrive without being able to move. So that's that whole mindset where I come from. All of us are in a place and we're trying to go to a place. And the importance of the ability to move to get to wherever it is you're trying to go is literally critical to that path to thriving. That's, to me, the biggest piece. And most folks don't grow up in an area where they get to go to school and work and pay their bills and it's all around the corner from them. Literally, you need the opportunity to get from places to places, to have opportunities. I speak of place in more of just the physical movement from an address to an address. I think about it in terms of socioeconomic, of mindsets. All of those things play into the how am I doing in life, and how is it working for me, and am I absolutely getting my opportunity? So for me, I think of transit as the gateway. It is the place where if you can get to the thing you're thinking about, whether that's education, whether that's the job you currently have or the job you're going to apply for, whether it's the medical appointment or the groceries you need to go obtain to take care of your family, all of those things are vital to thriving. And the vehicle, pun intended, is this process where you can get on and go. And if we can figure out how to make it easy, efficient, doable, no matter what the challenge you see on the other side, then I think we're doing the thing we need to be able to do. One of the earlier jobs that I had at Metro was on-call telephone operator. And sitting in that position, you get to hear personally from a customer when we were able to provide them with a successful journey and when we weren't able to. And just hearing the delight in someone's voice coming across that line when they actually were going to be able to move, maybe late at night or weekend, when they were thinking that the possibility was not going to come to fruition for them, I think is huge. And at the same time, I do recall those times where we didn't actually have the service set up, and you knew that was changing someone's potential outcomes because they weren't going to be able to go to that school or take that job. So to me, tying those together and having a better understanding of why we do what we do, and it's more than just a physical address move, is extremely important.
Tell us about your system some, Terry. What are the modes you operate? How many vehicles, employees, that kind of stuff?
Pre-COVID, we moved about 500,000 riders every weekday.
Okay.
We are the 8th largest public mobility agency in the United States. We have seven operating bus bases. We have 2 coming online, by the way, one in 2025 and one in 2027. That'll begin our journey into electrification, or I should say hasten our journey into electrification. So we operate bus. We also operate Sound Transit's Link Light Rail system, Central Link Light Rail, and we operate Sound Transit Express bus service. We operate on behalf of the city of Seattle, its streetcar. We provide access, DART services, water taxi services. We have the largest van pool rideshare service in the nation as well.
Really?
So
I didn't know that.
Pretty busy out there. Yeah.
Wow. That's something. And do you outsource your paratransit?
We do.
And so how has COVID impacted, the system and how are you recovering now?
Well, I think like most folks in the nation, what we saw was this kind of a tiered approach to the most of us were given an opportunity to stay home, duck and cover, and try to make it work until we could figure out what COVID actually was and how to work through it. But what we also saw at the same time was what essential means and who had absolutely no choice but to stay in the system and continue to ride.
Yes.
So we saw our services drop from about 430 to 500,000 rides down to the 100,000 numbers. We suspect, and I think some of the data is helping us to see that number would have even been higher except for layoffs and furloughs and whatnot. So we thought that number might have been even closer to maybe 150,000 at the floor of folks who have absolutely no choice but to go out and figure out how to make this thing work, this pandemic work for us. So it told us something about what essential riders look like. And we also suspect that we probably could have gotten the 150 to 200,000 had we done a different or perhaps more enhanced, better job of communicating in areas of the system where we could have done better to provide services. So in some areas, we have work to do. We learned that in this process. But in terms of essential, and we've seen ebb and flow over this period through the pandemic where the number has jumped, doubled, and then receded again as we've kind of had to deal with a new variant. So we're extremely hopeful about the future, but what we think we have learned is that, our values are that we should be absolutely growing our system based on greatest need. So that's pockets where we haven't served well. That is addressing those who have continued to use the system. And I think King County, we define greatest need as BIPOC communities, low and no income, English as a second language, English challenged, proficiency wise, foreign born, and disabled. I grew up in three of those pockets, if you think about it. So also another reason why I think I'm drawn to the idea of we can be that opportunity for opportunity growth, for thriving. And we've learned that, so we want to go deeper into those areas. We've talked about how our core values are and were prior to the pandemic: equity and sustainability, addressing where needs are greatest, and safety. So none of that has changed, but those values are now paired with data that tells a story to us about why that's important. I think folks are beginning to understand that even better and why transit is an essential component to an economic development process. So for us, we're leveraging what we now know, continuing to build out for a future that actually continues to be very bright. As Sound Transit will continue to expand its stretch across our region, we will, as the operator of that system, continue to grow right along with it, repurposing some of our route services, but really planning so that we can then take some of those services and not run them in parallel, but run them in a coordinated manner, a well-organized dance that allows for someone to traverse from the south part of our King County region to the north part and all points in between.
The system itself, King County Metro, I think a lot of folks maybe don't realize how transit systems are set up differently. It's like Peter Rogoff said that time, if you've seen one transit system, you've seen one transit system. So, transit systems in America, some of them are set up as transit authorities, right? WMATA, SEPTA, New York MTA. Some of them are set up as state agencies, like the one I used to be part of, MTA in Baltimore, New Jersey Transit. CT Transit in Connecticut, MBTA, they're state agencies, but you're part of a county government. Tell us about that.
So in our past, we were actually a board operated system back in the 90s.
Okay.
So you would have elected folks come to the board and priority would be transit only. We are under the King County governance structure, which means we have partners that actually benefit us in the sense of we can do more than just focus on physical mobility. So the governance structure that has us, there are other departments. There's Department of Health, Technology.
Yeah, right.
All the different components, natural health, local services, and all come together and work together. We have a county council that is elected, and they represent the various districts and the communities that they serve. So it's this integration component that comes together to discuss transit as well as health, as well as all the other things. So we're, I think, benefiting from being cognizant of all the other components. And I think that fits with the mindset of it is more than just a physical journey on a mobility with the mobility agency. We are literally trying to move folks who have been, as described nationally, non-destinational riders to a destination that is more than just a meal and a shelter. Something that actually helps with the medical side, whether it's mental or physical challenges, but that begins to address the wholeness of opportunity to thrive. So I think we benefit in that way. And in some other ways, we spend a lot of time working to make sure that folks who haven't grown up in transit become more educated in the understanding of what it takes to be a transit agency as well. So there's some give and take with that, but it is a very different structure. And I know I spend a lot of time with my friends across the nation explaining what the differences are when you come out to the King County region.
And how are you all handling fares? Are you one of the ones going fare free after COVID, or what's your story there?
We initially stopped collecting fares, and that was early on. We were doing some work to get some shields in place for our operators.
Right.
So backdoor boarding precluded taking fares. We did reestablish we are collecting fares now, but we are not in the process of reestablishing our fare enforcement components to the system. So somewhat of an honor system from our customers, our riders. But what we are doing is leveraging the use of our security folks to just ensure that folks are riding and following all the ride rules, masking up, doing the things that we need to do to make sure we're keeping the system as healthy and as safe as possible. So we're back to collecting fares, but there's work to be done there.
I just read, I think in Mass Transit Magazine today, you had a couple stories in there actually online about your county executive. It gave a safe perform report or something like that, kind of tying in what you just mentioned.
Yes, I think we're very proud of the way we've worked to improve our engagement with community. In our previous life, I think we were all the transit level folks, some of us coming from directly from colleges, planners and schedulers, and we would love to come out to you and show you all of our intellect, and this is what we're going to do, and it's going to be great, and you're going to love it. And what we've begun to understand is, true engagement is maybe sharing our data, but also engaging with communities on what it is they want and need from us, and then working together in this more of a co-creation way. Safe reform is just an extension of co-creation. It is us saying to the communities that use our systems and us saying to our employees who are in the system, what should we be doing differently to make you feel and be safer than you were before? So instead of us just going out and say, we're going to do this thing and you're going to love it, and we're the experts and it's all going to work for you, we've literally said, let's take a step back and begin to talk about this with folks who are experiencing the system on a regular basis and get to that place. Now, that doesn't preclude us from doing some of the work up front where we heard presence is extremely important. We're in the process of hiring 50 additional security officers We're asking our transit police folks to ride the system as they're patrolling it, securing it, so that we've increased presence. We expect to do even more of that while we do this work in this safe reform space with community and with our frontline employees' voices in rooms to get us to whatever the next place is. I think we're really excited about the idea of co-creation, and we're really big on that level of engagement, whether that's planning out the system, growing it, and all.
Hey, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you're going to be coming to our Think Transit conference this year down in Fort Worth. And on Monday, the 21st, you're our keynote speaker. And the theme of this year's conference is Ripple Effect, touching on the role of public transit in the larger community. And you've kind of touched on this, but is there anything else you want to share about public transit's role or place overall in a community?
Yeah, and I got to say, there's two reasons why I'm excited about coming and joining you all. The first is I'm a lifelong Dallas Cowboy fan, so
okay,
I'll try to explain later why how
Okay.
that it makes no sense. But the second is the ripple effect and the effect it caused, the cause effect of what transit and mobility does for all of us. And I think, yeah, I've lived it. So I Oprah Winfrey used to say this thing about everyone has a story if you're willing to take the time to listen to it. Sometimes we have to move bodies from their place to their place. And we don't always have the time to stop and say, why are you moving? Or why is it you need transit or what have you? But I guarantee you that they all have stories. And when we make a difference that has a big effect. That's the ripple to me, is this moment of, if you take me for an example, low, no income, kid of color, single parent mom, the only way I'm going to get to move is through a bus system. And I got a mother who figures out that, if I can figure out how to get him to go to this school over here that's outside our district, I think they pay better over there or something, or they're paying better attention in terms of how they teach and educate. So if I can figure out how to get him over there, then he's going to benefit from that, which then means our family benefits long term. So without me ever knowing that that's what this is all about from her mindset, I'm just doing what I'm told. I begin to learn later, so that potentially helped me to get to the short-term job that I had, which helped me to potentially get to the long-term education that I got, which then allowed me to return and begin to change the economic stature of my family. Now look at that and multiply that out for all the folks out there.
Yeah, tens of thousands of people. Yeah. Yep.
And we say opportunity to thrive. The ripple effect that comes through mobility is just life changing. And when you do get to stop and occasionally hear the story from really anyone who rides, you start to get the whole, if not for this, I don't get to have, and my kids don't get to have, and my kids' kids don't get to have. So I am literally, my grandmother was raised by her grandparents who were freed slaves.
Mm.
So when you look at the time frame for what mobility opportunity can do for you,
within a couple generations,
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
amazing.
How powerful it can be for all of us. And it's there for us to see. And sometimes that's why I talk about the whole engagement component. When you reach out and ask, what do you think? What are your opinions? Whether that's about safety or that's just about planning the system in terms of how we're going to grow it or restructure it, you get the opportunity to actually hear from folks who say, if you do it this way, then you're going to open up the coffers for this community to do things differently than they have. And when you build for those who have been silenced and marginalized, I think the ripple effect is even larger in the sense that when they rise, we all do. And we all absolutely do benefit from that. So I think it's just exciting to see the possibility for what a small change in thought or system structure, the outcome from that can be generational, and it can be immediately changing in terms of hope even. So that goes from the minute ripple of, hey, the bus actually goes where I need it to go, to I get to do a thing, take a job, go to a school, and the career for me and those who I take care of and love are going to forever be changed for the better.
So, final couple questions. One is on technology. What is the role now? I mean, I remember when I got to Baltimore about 5 years ago, I used to say, man, our technology is stuck in the 80s. Everything was just, we had radio signals, not GPS, that kind of stuff. What's now in the 2020s? What do you see as the role of technology in helping to deliver how King County Metro provides mobility?
I think the pandemic has pulled the covers back on several things, including technology. And we're in a tech-rich area in King County.
Yeah, that's right. You got Microsoft and everything out there.
However, we weren't always the most flexible and quickest at adopting and moving forward. I think we're having to be more forward-thinking. We can't afford to be in a situation where a pandemic-type situation catches us unaware again. But now we need to be thinking about the here and now, but also the future of how folks move and how we leverage that. So that's tech for sure, and how we leverage what we didn't know before. How do we use our data to get ourselves up to speed? How do we use technology to help our employees work easier, more efficiently? And how do we then transfer that to our customers so that fast, frequent, all day is also easy? So you don't have to think about a lot. You go out and it begins to work for you. So I think that becomes we have to learn how, as transit agencies, and I think nationally we have to do that, is begin to push yourselves to, while you're dealing with here and now, you also have to deal with mid and future, and we have to do it better, and we have to be preparing ourselves for those journeys. So sometimes that's process. It starts with a thought. The thought of running your coaches endlessly without putting them in layover spaces, and coordinating better with your first and last mile components so that it feels and is more seamless than it ever was before, is going to require you to use technology that some of us are kind of going, I don't want to do that. It's a great idea, but maybe you should do that after I retire or what have you. No, we need to look at it and do it now and be prepared. And I think that, again, goes back to the thing I keep harping on, which is this engagement component. If you can think of it and someone says, why can't you just make this easier for me? Then there's a nexus for us to then go into that area and say, why can't we? And in a lot of ways, there's tech that says you can, and we just have to figure out how to do it. So there's just there are lots of areas where tech begins to address the question that folks have right now about what mobility, what's holding back our ability to make it easier to use. And we just need the rooms now to begin to go there. So do our control centers need to be better equipped to do work in the sense of fast, frequent, reliable? How do we keep a bus moving, but also honor that an operator needs a break and a lunch, guaranteed? So how do we ensure? We have operators who literally will get to the end of the line and have to make a decision. And I don't always think they make the best decision when they go right back out because they know they have customers waiting for them at the expense of taking that moment of time to relieve themselves, to get back their energy levels. And I think it's upon us to leverage technology in ways we never did before to give them that. But how do we tie all those things together, and how do we continue to push ourselves? Paul, as you mentioned, this across the nation, we struggle with this mindset of, yeah, but we've mastered the thing we know right now. And perhaps we're slightly fearful of the future. But I like to talk to our folks and say, isn't the flat screen television a lot better than that big box that you used to have? We're not going to give you a thing that makes it harder for you to do your work.
Right.
We are trying to literally invest in making it easier for all folks. And I think that's a part of that quality of work-life balance as well. If we're honoring that mindset, then we're actually going to create this win-win-win. Good for the employee, good for the writer, good for the organization, and great place then for us all to come and work, knowing that we're providing a service to these communities.
Great segue to the last question, where you mentioned the future several times in your response. What does the future hold for King County Metro in the next, 1 to 5 years? What's your game plan? What big capital projects, other than the 2 garages you've mentioned, do you have coming up for everyone?
The 2 garages are kind of our big push to go to 2035 and get to clean, efficient electric energy 100% across our fleet. We're also doing some work in that area with our non-revenue fleets and our smaller fleets. So access, we're going to step out into those areas as well to try and push to get to that place in space. As a part of our growth and change and evolution, we want to engage better than we have. We think we're doing a great job. We want to make sure that those voices that I mentioned earlier are absolutely in our rooms and having those discussions with us as well. But there are concepts that we're always trying to work through as well. How do we use technology in rural areas versus urban areas where the need is slightly different? So transit on demand might be the thing that we figure out how to do with smaller vehicles that still tie into some of the fixed services better. How do we create the dance that, and I know Peter has said this, Peter Rogoff has said to me, and I agree, people don't care what part of the mode they're in. They want the modes to work well for them so that they don't have a breakdown anywhere in the system. So how do we build that out with our partners as well, so that these modes absolutely do communicate better and more efficiently so no one does get left? So along this journey, I think there are certain concepts. One of mine is that I'm very fond of is this mindset of we keep the buses moving and we take our operators and give them the guaranteed breaks and lunches. So we create spaces that are just really valuing them, that they can rest, turn the lights off, eat, turn on a gaming control, whatever. What is it they would love to have in the space that shows them honor? And then another operator leaves that space, gets on the coach and keeps it moving. And we go to a thing that I think tech is pushing us towards anyway, when we talk about frequent, reliable, all day. Train systems run on more headway than they do on time. Hopefully I'm not disposing some type of a thing out there. But as the operator of Sound Transit Central Link Light Rail, it's not always on time. But when we keep that headway going,
that's what matters to the customer. That's right.
No one calls us. If we can duplicate that mindset in the rest of the system, frequency is your friend, but marry that to and you're not exhausting your employees at the same time. Now, what technology is out there that helps us to go to that place? That's where we need to step in. Some exist already, and we need to go ahead and begin to move in terms of more like our research and development type of mindset for our futures. But in other areas, we're all pushing, and we should never rest. So another thought I have is we're trying to figure out how to remove paying cash, which slows the system down, and take it out. So there are a lot of folks out there who are beginning to look at how you do that. And then this is that, and we can't leave folks behind. So from where I come from, when you talk about unbanked communities, how do you make it work for them? If you make it work for them, it will work for everyone else. And guess what? Folks who have low and no income, BIPOC communities, they want technology as well. They love it. And we should be not shying away from it. We should be leaning in to trying to figuring out how to unstick that piece. Because I think the benefit for all is that frequent, reliable, not having to think about when the next thing is coming around the corner for you, works to all of our benefits. And the more we prove that for those who have the greatest need, then the more us choice riders will go, well, that thing seems to be working a little better than if I try to navigate it myself.
It's like my buddy Kevin Quinn said, your neighbor to the north at TransLink. He told me last month, I was interviewing him for something, and he said, frequency equals freedom. And I like that one. I've been using that. That's
Exactly. Yeah, I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey, Terry White, thanks so much for being with us. And thank you for being our keynote speaker just in a few weeks, March 21st, down there in Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you so much for being a leader in our industry, someone who cares and understands the role of public transit and the ripple effect it has in our communities.
Well, thank you for having me today, Paul. I'm absolutely looking forward to joining you all in the great state of Texas.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged in depth, and to our guest, my neighbor to the south, Terry White of King County Metro. I personally can't wait for his keynote at Think Transit next month. If this episode is any indication, his keynote is just going to blow you away. Now, next week on Transit Unplugged News and Views, Paul is talking with Norma Noor of Express Rail Link in Malaysia about that country's rail transportation network. If you have questions, comments, or would like to be a guest on Transit Unplugged, email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.